Oh, that's a tough question.
And he's the only guy who gave me the sense that I believe in everything he's saying.
I don't think a team can succeed without having a great in-game leader.
Welcome everybody to our roundtable discussion where we're going to be discussing the attributes and thoughts of an in-game leader. Of course, we've got Pimp, we've got Moses joining us as well. Maybe we should start off the conversation by discussing what an in-game leader actually is, because I feel like it is a lot more than just being in a server, you know, calling a strat, making sure your team are all on the same page.
How I would explain the role of an IGL, probably the same way that I would explain any other captain for any sport.
Oh, that's a tough question because there's really much going into it.
That's the person that makes the shot calling, and that's the person that all of the other players look to for leadership.
I think actually it has a different meaning for a lot of people. But for me personally, the end-game leader is the guy making the most decisions in the team. He's controlling how you play, especially on the T side, also coming with a lot of input on the CT side, maybe also deciding on the CT side. Probably the biggest voice in the team, having the most things to say, and probably also has somewhat of the best understanding of the game.
I don't even think it's necessarily like an in-game leader thing. I think it's just about being like a leader within a team, because I think often that person just coincidentally happens to also be the in-game leader.
Sure.
But there is kind of like an emotional leadership that needs to be taken up by someone on the team and by the team as a whole. And I think that kind of falls into, yeah, you're going to have your game plan and everything, but if like the team is on like different wavelengths emotionally in terms of their focus, in terms of their comfort, in terms of what's going on, in terms of that game plan that you construct, that game plan is going to have a tough time. I think there's an element of being an in-game leader or being a leader on a team that very much is like, can you actually get all 5 people to buy into this? Some days it's just a matter of like coming into practice and being like, yo, I woke up on the best side of the bed. I want to push. I want to practice these aggressive plays on our CT side. I want to practice these things that we can bring into our game. And just having someone who has that kind of an energy to get everyone excited about trying something new or everyone focused on the same thing. I think it's a very underrated quality in a lot of ways.
Fully agree. It's hard to define what an in-game leader is necessarily, right? Because I agree there's the emotional leaders of the teams, there's the tactical leader, so to speak, there's the coach as well who have a big say in both of those. I think a good in-game leader for me, you know, and what makes the difference is a guy with authority, you know, a guy that people believe in.
I think the most important personality for IGL is leader. Not only his team need to listen to him, but but they need to trust in his goals. And if the team respects him, he will definitely upgrade to leader, and yeah, it's the most important personality.
And the best example I can give, and I know people will hate me for saying this, but Glaive, you know, a guy that I used to play with. Yeah, shocking.
God bless.
But honestly speaking, I played with maybe 5 or 6, 7 different in-game leaders, and he's the only guy who gave me the sense that I believe in everything he's saying. I would blindly follow whatever he's calling in any given scenario.
It's really important that you can put yourself into respect, make people actually understand and respect you for the things you say, make people believe in you. Yeah,
I think for any leader, the main attributes that you'll notice is that they're very confident in the way that they speak. They're direct, and they're a good supportive figure. They want to see you succeed, and I think those are the 3 things that I would pay attention to for leaders.
Sometimes as a player, you may even notice it from FaZe or when you're playing, you know, with your team nowadays or whatever that may be. Your in-game leader or your guy calling in your team is giving a direction, you know, or giving a direct call, and you're thinking to yourself, oh God, this is a bad idea. If you already have that mentality and already have that mindset going into the duel that you're going to take, there's a much higher chance you'll lose that duel. You're going in with no confidence, you're not believing in the plan, you're not believing in the call, and it will just wrinkle down to the team, and you'll perform worse than if you're believing in the exact same call and you think to yourself, that's a damn good call, you know. It may be the exact same scenario, but if you have players believing in what's being told by the in-game leader, who has the authority, who has the, I guess, goodwill from people, then you will just instantly become much better. You'll go into disadvantaged situations and you'll turn them around and you'll win it anyway because you're believing in what's being told to you. And I think having that ability as an in-game leader to speak with authority and make sure that the players are believing in what you're saying, even though what you may be saying is dog. It could be a terrible call, it could be the worst call out of all the possible scenarios. As long as you believe in it, there's a chance that it works.
there is a quality of an in-game leader. It's perhaps the best quality is when you have entirely run out of ideas and you have no clue what to do, but you have to call something. And I think every in-game leader will tell you there's games that are like the most intense games of their career, very, very close coming down to the wire. They have no idea what to call, and you just like randomly pick something, the first thought that comes to your brain, and you have to sell it, and you have to call it and spawn like it's exactly according to plan, like it's exactly what you think is going to work. And I think every in-game leader will have a funny story that they can tell you about.
Remember
that.
how Astralis won the major final? You know, by
just
rushing outside.
Rush outside with Tech Nines. It's like, yeah, VersePro's just destroying us, so yeah, we got nothing, let's rush outside. And that was the turnaround point. And I guarantee if you go back and talk to Glaive, he's like, yeah, I didn't think that was
I think like a word that springs to mind then for me is having trust in the leadership role as well. And obviously both of you guys have had experience on teams, yourself as a player, yourself as a coach. So how do you kind of build that trust?
Yeah, trust is massive, but not just trust in terms of like what you're saying in terms of in-game, but trust to be able to have an open conversation. Trust to be able to actually be able to go up to someone and say, I want to talk about this. Like, let's see if there's some different opportunities here.
Having a good understanding as a leader of how you utilize your players the best, I think that's a pretty important.
So the best qualities an in-game leader could have is like, especially having empathy, I would say. Because whenever you flame your teammates or something, you have to know how far you can go.
Some players will blow up, some players will be cool with it, some players are chill. Players also have to build up that trust in their coach as well, that their coach knows they can approach them and actually have a discussion about some of the problems that are going on, or else, you know, it's just not going to work. And I think when you see the trust break down both ways, is normally when things really go off the rails.
Well, think about it if you relate it to football, something we in Europe, you know, play a lot, and we're quite a fan of football. You know, the fake football with the round one you kick.
Checkered ball?
Football. You have 25 players in your squad in football, right? So if you lose the trust of 5 of those players, or 5 of those players are not happy that they're sitting on the bench and not playing all the time, you can live with that as a coach. But in Counter-Strike, it's so close. You're only 5 players on the team. So as you said, once you lose the trust of just one of those players, or maybe 2 of the players, that's 40% of the team, right? That's a lot of the team all of a sudden where the trust is gone. So I feel trust is a key word as an in-game leader as well, because if you lose the trust of your players, and if I'm, as a player, don't believe in the call that's being called to me, or I don't believe in I have to walk up middle on Inferno and go for a duel, and I'm thinking this is a stupid idea, and then I go up and I die, I'm like, yeah, I told you it was a stupid idea. Once that happens, you will just instantly perform way, way worse. And given Counter-Strike, it's such a close and intimate game where there's only 5 players on the roster, you cannot afford to lose that trust at all, whereas in football or other big team sports that are largely a bigger size than Counter-Strike, it's okay to have 1 or 2 players that don't really trust you or don't really like you, because you can always pick another player. In Counter-Strike, that's not the case, so you need the trust from all parties involved.
I'll tell you another great in-game leader to look at in terms of the impact you can have as a leader even outside the game and he was my honorable mention for the World Team of the Year last year. It was tiziaN. And you look at all the controversy Heroic was part of. You know, we just kind of touched on what, you know, it's difficult to be an effective player when the atmosphere within the team is horrible. And there's probably no greater atmosphere killer than the different controversies that Heroic had to trudge through for like 6, 7, 8 months to close out last year. That was an absolutely disaster of a year. But every game, every match that Heroic played, everyone's huddled up around tiziaN. tiziaN's given a Braveheart speech each and every time. He's going crazy and the emotions are getting riled up. And that's the kind of leadership and that's the kind of mentality you need. And look, Heroic, despite everything, had a pretty damn good year, you know, all things considered. So I got to attribute a lot of that to tiziaN, especially with the young players he has around him, to be that guy who kind of pulls everyone into the huddle before the game and it gets everyone focused and gets everyone's energy like pointed in the same direction. I think tiziaN did a phenomenal job as a leader of his team last year.
I think that's when you were saying earlier, the fact that as a leader, even if everybody around you hates you, you still have to show up, you still have to unite everybody as a team, because we saw that being exemplified in the Royal Arena when they went up against Astralis. I for one was maybe expecting the crowd to be a little more 50-50.
tiziaN was expecting it too, wasn't he?
Yeah, undoubtedly.
Didn't he say we're gonna have like 40% of the fans?
And then you count the Astralis jerseys in the crowd and you just go, this is not happening.
I think that was the worst call of tiziaN's career. I think the Kings crowd would help
I was like, have you been in Royal Arena before? Do you know?
I agree though, because that's another way you kind of like value an in-game leader or value a coach for that matter as well. if you look at the heroic lineup, at least according to me, I think some of the players, you know, they're good players, but they're not players that are supposed to be in a major semifinal. They're not players that are supposed to be on a team that is ranked number 4, number 3, and number 2 in the entire world. They're good players, but they're not gems, you know. They're not Nikos, they're not Hunters, they're not, you know, star players. Yet cadeaN has found a way, back with Hunting when he was part of Heroic as well. We gotta give him credit for the work he did do with them back in the days.
Not all of it.
A lot of it, you know. I mean, some of it, but they elevated. I would say they elevated the team. Where you look at the 5 players, maybe there were 5, you know, or 6, you know, in terms of raw talent, but they played like an 8, you know, and that's a way of valuing, you know, what an in-game leader does. If you can elevate a player that is decent, but you can put him in a system so all of a sudden he performs like an 8, I think that's very admirable. I think that's some of the players, yeah. Exactly, that's something cadeaN is excelling at it.
I don't think a team can succeed without having a great in-game leader. You've seen a lot of rosters in the past that fall apart due to not having a strong leader, and I think it's just a role that needs to be filled. You know, even if the player doesn't can't have a great fragging output, but if you have enough players around him that can, and the leadership is strong, then you're gonna make the roster work.
Apart from that, I would say just being a captain, like always be there for your mates, always work hard, and yeah, be like a role model for the team.
Of course, hard working is really important also. If you want to be the best at something, you have to I wouldn't say work the hardest, but sometimes work the smartest. So you have to kind of reflect about those things. How am I getting on top of my opponents, and how am I being better than them in a tactical way?
You don't necessarily need to be a tactical genius in order to be the in-game leader. You just need to be a player that people believe in, or a player that fills out a void in your team that makes it all come together and makes it all work out. Just the fact that Tarek won a major as an in-game leader is a crazy sentence to say, but that's how it went down.
Over cadeaN.
Over cadeaN.
Yeah.
There you go.
Man, crazy place, 2018.
Well done,
That was pretty nuts.
Better times. Simpler times.
Yeah. They were the best of times, they were the worst of times. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me for this
Shout out to
roundtable
Charles
discussion.
Dickens.
And thank you very much, everybody at home, for joining us for this discussion of in-game leaders.
God, I hope that was Charles Dickens.
Yeah, it was, yeah.